Nate's knuckles split open on Dutch's teeth. Blood, hot and slick, ran down his wrist as the big man crumpled into the Nevada dust. Nate stood over him, chest heaving, and looked up at the child pressed against the rocks. The world stopped. She had Benjamin's face. Not similar. Not reminded him of. She had his dead son's face. The exact curve of his mouth when he smiled. The same defiant tilt of the chin. And Nate's legs nearly gave out, because Benjamin was 5 years dead and buried, and this was impossible. Except it wasn't. Because she was real, and she was screaming, and Vernon Pike had a gun pointed at Nate's head. "Step away from him, Mr. Crawford." Before we go further, drop your city in the comments so I can see how far this story travels. Hit subscribe and stay until the end, because what happens next, what Nate does to save this child who wears his son's face, it's going to break every rule he's lived by for 47 years. 3 hours earlier, Nate had been alone, the way he preferred it. Hammer striking iron, the forge breathing fire. Nothing but the work and the silence and the careful not thinking about Sarah's grave on the hillside. Then the scream cut through everything. He ran. His bad leg from Gettysburg screamed back, but he ran anyway, because that sound, high and desperate and young, it was every parent's nightmare made audible. "Help me! Please, somebody!" Nate crested Copper Ridge and saw them. 3 men on horseback, circling a small figure like wolves. The man in the dark suit was talking, his voice smooth. "Come down, little miss. Mr. Carver paid good money. No use fighting." "My mama said no." The girl's voice cracked. "She said I'm not for sale." "Your mama's dead, sweetheart. Fell from a wagon. Tragic accident." "You pushed her. I saw you." Nate didn't announce himself, didn't give warning, just closed the distance in 10 strides and grabbed the thick-shouldered man's boot as he reached for the girl. Yanked hard. The man, Dutch, came off his horse roaring. Which brought them to now, blood on Nate's knuckles, gun at his head. The girl staring down with those impossible eyes. "Legal papers," Pike said, still pleasant despite the violence. "Contract of indenture, all proper. You're assaulting an officer of the court." "Don't care." Nate's voice was flat. "You will when the sheriff hangs you." "That child ain't property." "The law says different," Pike smiled. "Judge Howard himself signed the contract. 7 years of service to Mr. Augustus Carver of Sacramento. Legal as Sunday church." "Where's her mother really?" "Told you. Accident." "You killed her." This from the girl above them. "I watched you do it." Pike's smile thinned. "Careful, child. Lying about your betters is a sin." Nate looked at Dutch, still gasping in the dirt, at the weasel-faced kid on the 3rd horse, gun drawn but hands shaking. At Pike, with his pleasant mask and dead eyes. He'd killed men like this in the war. Killed them easy. "Get off my land," Mate said. "Can't do that." "Then I guess we have a problem." Pike studied him. "You know who Augustus Carver is?" "Don't care." "Richest man in California. Friends with the governor. One word from him, you lose this forge, this land, everything." "Still don't care." Something shifted in Pike's expression. The pleasantness cracked. "You're making a mistake, blacksmith." "Made plenty. What's one more?" Pike holstered his gun. Dutch hauled himself onto his horse, blood streaming from his mouth. The kid kept his weapon trained on Nate, terrified but obedient. "We'll be back," Pike said, "with proper authority. And when we come, Mr. Crawford, you'll hand her over. Or burn." They rode south. Nate watched until they vanished, then turned to the girl. She was maybe 7, red hair in tangles, dress torn and bloody, rope burns on her wrists, bruises on her throat.
"They gone?"
Her voice was small. "For now."
"You're bleeding."
Nate looked at his split knuckles. "I've had worse."
"Are you going to give me to them?"
The question landed like a fist. "No."
"They have papers, legal papers."
"Don't care about papers."
"Why?"
She climbed down slowly, never taking her eyes off him.
"You don't know me."
Nate thought about Benjamin, about promises made to dying children, about 5 years of silence. "What's your name?"
"Rosemary Sullivan. Rose."
"I'm Nathaniel Crawford. Nate." He gestured toward his forge, smoke still rising. "You hungry?"
"Yes, sir."
"Don't call me sir. Come on." They walked. Rose stumbled twice, exhausted. The third time, Nate caught her elbow. "When'd you last eat?"
2 days, maybe 3.
"Sleep?"
"Can't remember."
At the forge, Nate sat her at his table. Bread, cheese, dried beef. She stared at it like it might vanish. "It's real," he said. "Eat." She grabbed the bread with both hands and tore into it, crying while she chewed. Nate turned away, heated water, gave her privacy for the grief.
"Mr. Nate?"
Her voice came small behind him. "Yeah?"
"My mama. She really dead?"
Nate faced her, blood and dirt on her face, 2 old eyes. "Yeah, Rose, she is."
"They killed her because of me."
"No." He crouched down. "They killed her because they're evil. That's on them, not you."
"She wouldn't give me to them, so they shot her."
Nate's hands curled into fists. "Tell me what happened." Rose's voice went flat, distant.
"We were heading to Sacramento. Mama said she had work at a hotel. Then Mr. Pike stopped us. Had papers saying Mama owed Mr. Carver money. Mama said she never borrowed nothing, but Pike said the debt was legal. Said if she couldn't pay in money, she'd pay with me. For 7 years.
Indenture.
Mama grabbed the reins to run.
Dutch caught the horses. Pike pulled Mama down. They were fighting, and Mama screamed for me to run, so I jumped and I hid in the rocks." Her voice cracked. "And then I heard the gunshot. Just one. And Mama stopped screaming. You see it happen? I saw Dutch push her. Saw her fall. Heard the shot. Then it wasn't an accident. Mr. Pike said it was. Said she slipped." "Pike's a liar." Nate stood. "And tomorrow, we're riding to Salvation Creek. There's a marshal there, Owen Blackwell. He's a good man. He'll help."
"What if he has papers too?"
"Then we'll figure something else out." Rose set down the bread.
"Why are you helping me?"
Nate looked at her, really looked. Benjamin's face. Sarah's red hair, maybe, but Benjamin's smile. "You remind me of someone."
"Who?"
"My son. He died 5 years back. Fever."
"Oh."
Rose's eyes filled.
"I'm sorry."
"Me too." Nate cleared his throat. "Come on, you need to wash and sleep. Tomorrow's going to be hard." He heated water in the big tub, left her alone to scrub off the days of dust and terror. When she emerged, wrapped in one of his old shirts, she looked impossibly small. "You can sleep in the back room," Nate said. "Was my son's. Been empty a while."
"What was his name?"
"Benjamin."
"That's nice."
She followed him to the small bedroom.
"Will you stay? Just until I sleep?"
"Yeah, I'll stay." She climbed into bed, pulled the quilt to her chin. Nate sat in the chair by the window.
"Mr. Nate?"
"Yeah?"
They're going to come back, aren't they?
Probably.
Are you scared?
Nate thought about Gettysburg, about watching men die, about killing them himself when he had to. No.
I am.
That's all right. Being scared is smart. Rose was quiet for a moment.
In the rocks, when I was hiding, I heard Mama singing, right before the shot. She sang the song she always sang when I was scared.
What song?
Don't cry, little one. That's all I remember. Just those words.
Nate's throat tightened. That's a good song. Will you remember it if something happens to me? Nothing's happening to you. But if it does, it won't. He leaned forward. I promise, Rose. I'm not letting them take you.
You can't promise that.
I just did. She studied his face, searching for truth. Whatever she found there seemed to satisfy her, because she closed her eyes. Nate watched her sleep, watched her face relax, watched the fear drain away. In the lamplight, she looked exactly like Benjamin. Exactly. He moved back to the main room, sat at the table. His knuckles had stopped bleeding, but they ached. Good. He wanted the reminder. Wanted to remember what he'd done, what he'd have to do again. Pike would come back, with the sheriff, with more men, with those legal papers and all the weight of civilization behind them. And Nate was just one man, a blacksmith with a bad leg and too many ghosts. But he'd killed before. Could kill again if he had to. Would kill again, he corrected himself. Not if, when. The thought should have bothered him. Didn't. He pulled out his service revolver, cleaned and loaded it. 6 shots. Pike and Dutch for sure. The kid, maybe, if he was stupid. That left 3 bullets for whoever else showed up. Not enough. He'd need the rifle, too. Outside, something moved. Nate was at the window instantly, gun drawn. Nothing. Just darkness and wind. He waited, counted his breaths like he'd done in the war. 1, 2, 3. Still nothing. He was turning away when he saw it. A piece of paper, tucked under a rock by the door. He stepped out carefully, gun raised, and retrieved it. The note was short, written in elegant script. Mr. Crawford, you have until sundown tomorrow to deliver the girl to Salvation Creek. Come alone. Comply, and this ends peacefully. Resist, and I'll burn your forge to the ground with both of you inside. The choice is yours. V. Pike. Nate crumpled the paper. Sundown tomorrow. That gave him maybe 16 hours. He looked back at the cabin, where Rose slept in Benjamin's bed. Looked at the forge he'd built with his own hands. Looked at the hillside, where Sarah and Benjamin lay buried. Then he looked north, toward the rocks where Pike and his men had camped. 16 hours. Nate went back inside, locked the door, and pulled both guns close. He didn't sleep, just watched the darkness and waited for dawn and the war that would come with it. Dawn came cold and gray. Nate had watched it arrive through the window, his back against the wall, both guns across his lap. He hadn't slept. Couldn't. Every sound outside had been Pike returning, every shadow a threat, until the darkness finally gave way to weak morning light, and he could breathe again. Rose appeared in the doorway, still wearing his oversized shirt, her red hair a wild tangle around her face. She looked at the guns, at Nate's bloodshot eyes, and understood immediately. They came back, she said. Left a note. We have until sundown to turn you over. Are we going to run? We're going to Salvation Creek, to the marshal. What if the marshal makes you give me back? Nate stood, joints popping after the long night. Then we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Get dressed. We leave in 20 minutes. She didn't argue, just disappeared back into the bedroom. Nate moved to the kitchen, forced himself to eat bread he couldn't taste, to drink water that sat like lead in his stomach. His hands were steady, though. That was good. He'd need steady hands before this was over. Rose emerged, wearing her torn dress, and Nate realized she had nothing else. Nothing but what she'd been wearing when her mother died. He pulled one of Sarah's old dresses from the trunk in the bedroom, something simple and dark that Sarah had worn to church. It would be too big, but better than rags. "Here," he said, holding it out. Rose touched the fabric carefully, like it might burn her.
This was your wife's? She'd want you to have it. You sure?
I'm sure. Rose changed quickly and came out swimming in dark wool, but she'd rolled the sleeves and tied the waist with a piece of rope and somehow made it work. She looked older in it, less like a child and more like a small person carrying weight no child should carry. They ate in silence. Then Nate saddled both horses, his gelding, a steady bay named Sergeant, and the mare he'd bought last year for hauling supplies. Rose watched him work, her face pale in the early light. "How far is Salvation Creek?" she asked. 3 hours if we push. 4 if we're careful." "Which are we being?" "Careful. Pike's men could be anywhere." He lifted Rose onto the mare, and she settled into the saddle like she'd done it before. "Your mama teach you to ride?" "Her and my papa, before he died." "What happened to him?" "Mine accident. I was 4. She gathered the reins. "Mama said he was a good man. Said I got his hair and his temper." "You got a temper?" "Mama said so." "I don't think so. I just don't like being told what to do." Nate almost smiled. Almost. "We might get along fine, then." They rode out as the sun broke over the eastern hills, turning the valley gold. Nate kept them to the low ground, following creek beds and ravines, staying out of sight as much as possible. Every ridgeline was a danger, every open stretch a risk. Rose rode quietly for the first hour, then broke the silence. "Mr. Nate?" "Just Nate." "Nate, what if the marshal can't help us?" "Then we keep riding." "To where?" "Don't know yet. Colorado, maybe. Or north, to Oregon." "You'd leave your home? For me?" Nate glanced back at her, small and scared on the too big horse. "Already decided I'm not letting them take you. Everything else is just details." "But why? I still don't understand why." He pulled Sergeant to a stop, waited for Rose to come alongside. "You ever loved someone so much it hurt?" "My mama." "Then you know. When Benjamin died, I thought that was it. Thought I'd never feel that again. That need to protect someone, to keep them safe. Thought that part of me died with him." He looked at her directly. "Then I saw you, and I felt it again. Don't know if that's God or fate or just luck, but I'm not questioning it. I'm just doing what needs doing." Rose's eyes filled with tears. "I'm not your son, though." "No, you're not. You're Rose, and that's enough." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "Mama used to say family isn't just blood. She said it's who shows up when you need them." Your mama was right. They rode on. The sun climbed higher, warming the air, but not Nate's bones. He kept watching their back trail, kept listening for hoofbeats that would mean Pike had come early. But there was nothing. Just the wind and the creak of saddle leather and the steady rhythm of the horse's hooves on hard ground. Around noon, they stopped by a creek to water the horses. Rose slid down and immediately sat on a rock, her legs obviously aching. She was trying to hide it, but Nate saw. "You sore?" "A little." "We can rest longer if you need." "No, I'm fine.
We should keep moving.
Brave little thing. Nate filled the canteens and they ate the dried meat he'd packed, washing it down with cold creek water. Rose kept looking around, nervous.
You think they're following us? She asked.
Maybe. Or maybe they're waiting in Salvation Creek.
What'll you do if they are?
Depends on what the marshal says.
And if he says to give me back?
Nate met her eyes. I won't.
Even if it's the law?
The law said my people could own your people once upon a time. Law said a lot of things that were wrong. This is one of them. Rose was quiet for a moment.
You really would fight them all? For me?
Already did once. Don't mind doing it again.
People are going to get hurt.
People are already hurt. Your mama's dead. You've got rope burns on your wrists and nightmares that won't quit. The hurting's already happened, Rose. All I'm doing is making sure it stops here. She looked down at her hands, at the raw marks circling her wrists like bracelets of pain.
Mr. Pike said I should be grateful. Said Mr. Carver was giving me opportunities, education and a trade, and a chance at a better life.
Pike's full of shit. Rose's eyes widened.
You cursed.
Yeah, sorry, but he is.
I know, just didn't expect you to say it.
Sometimes the truth requires ugly words. Nate stood, his leg protesting. Come on, we're burning daylight. They mounted up and rode. The valley began to narrow as they moved east, the hills pressing closer. Nate didn't like it. Too many places for an ambush, too many blind corners. But it was the fastest route to Salvation Creek, and they were running out of time.
Tell me about Benjamin,
Rose said suddenly.
Why?
Because you loved him, and I want to know. Nate was quiet for a long moment. Then, he was 6 when he died. Loved horses and swimming in the creek and driving his mother crazy with questions. Always asking, why? Why is the sky blue? Why do birds fly? Why can't we live forever?
What'd you tell him?
The truth when I knew it. Made up answers when I didn't. He didn't care if they were right. Just liked hearing my voice. I was like that with my mama.
Yeah?
She worked nights sometimes, serving drinks at the saloon. When she'd come home, I'd be half asleep, but I'd make her tell me about her night. Didn't matter what she said. Just needed to hear her talking.
She must have been tired.
She was, but she always did it anyway. Always sat on my bed and told me stories until I fell back asleep. Rose's voice cracked.
I'm never going to hear her voice again.
No, you're not.
Does it get easier, missing them?
Nate thought about Sarah's grave, about the flowers he still brought every Sunday, about how he still reached for her in bed sometimes, forgetting she was gone. No, it just gets different. The sharp edge is dull, but the hole never fills. You just learn to live around it.
I don't want to live around it. I want my mama back.
I know. They crested a rise and Salvation Creek appeared below them, a collection of wooden buildings clustered around a single main street. Smoke rose from chimneys, and Nate could see people moving between the buildings, going about their business like the world wasn't falling apart. We're here, he said. Rose stared down at the town.
What now?
Now we find Marshal Blackwell and pray he's the man I think he is. They rode down the slope and onto the main street. People stopped to stare. A blacksmith they knew, but a blacksmith with a child? That was new. Nate ignored them, rode straight to the marshal's office at the far end of town. Marshal Owen Blackwell was sitting on the porch of his office, a cup of coffee in his dark hands, his tin star catching the afternoon sun. He was in his 50s, with gray threading through his hair, and scars on his face that spoke of a hard life. When he saw Nate, his eyebrows went up. Nathaniel Crawford. Didn't expect to see you today. Got trouble, Owen. I can see that.
Blackwell stood, his eyes on Rose. "Who's the girl?" "Rose Sullivan. Her mother was killed 3 days ago. Men are trying to take her. Say they have legal papers." Blackwell's expression hardened. "Come inside." They dismounted and followed him into the office, a sparse room with a desk, 2 cells in the back, and a gun rack on the wall. Blackwell gestured to the chairs, and they sat. Rose stayed close to Nate, her hand finding his. "Start from the beginning," Blackwell said. Nate told him everything. The scream, finding Rose, the fight with Dutch, Pike's threats. Rose filled in the gaps, her voice small but steady, describing her mother's death and the contract and the blood on the rocks. When they finished, Blackwell was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Vernon Pike. You know him?" "Know of him. Collection agent for Augustus Carver. Carver's a big man in California. Owns half of Sacramento, they say. Mines, hotels, shipping companies. And he's got a taste for young servants. Buys up indenture contracts, brings them to his estate, works them until they're used up." "That's slavery," Mate said. "Not legally. Indenture's different. It's a contract, signed voluntarily. Courts uphold them. Rose's mother didn't sign voluntarily. Pike killed her when she refused." "Can you prove that?" "I saw the blood. Saw the rope burns on Rose's wrists. And Rose saw them push her mother." Blackwell looked at Rose. "That true, child?" "Yes, sir. I saw Dutch push Mama off the wagon. She hit the ground, and then Mr. Pike shot her. Just once. And she stopped moving." "You're sure it was Pike who shot her?" Rose hesitated. I didn't see him pull the trigger. But I heard the shot, and he was standing over her, and he was the only one with a gun drawn." Blackwell ran a hand over his face. "That's not enough. Not against a man like Carver. He'll have lawyers, witnesses, documents, and Pike will swear it was an accident." "So what do we do?" Nate asked. "Best thing? You give the girl to me. I'll hold her here, safe, while I investigate. See if I can prove the mother's death wasn't an accident. If I can, the contract's void. And if you can't, then legally she belongs to Carver." "No." The word came out flat, final. "Nate, I said no, Owen. I'm not handing her over." "I'm trying to help you." "By putting her in a cell? By making her wait while you shuffle papers and hope Carver's lawyers make a mistake? That's not help. That's just slower cruelty." Blackwell leaned forward. "You know what happens if you run? Pike will hunt you. Carver will put a price on your head. You'll be outlaws, both of you. Never able to settle, never able to rest. Is that what you want for her?" "I want her free." "Free and running aren't the same thing." "They are if the alternative is 7 years of slavery." Rose's hand tightened on Nate's. "Maybe the marshal's right. Maybe I should stay here." "No." "But—" "No, Rose. I made you a promise. I'm keeping it." The door opened. Vernon Pike stepped through, 2 men flanking him. Not Dutch this time. These were harder men, professional, guns worn low and easy. Behind them, Nate could see more men outside, 6 total. Pike smiled. "Marshal Blackwell, good to see you again." "Pike, I told you not to come back to my town." "And I told you I go where my business takes me." Pike's eyes found Rose, and his smile widened. "Hello, child. Time to go home." Rose shrank back against Nate. Blackwell stood, his hand near his gun. "She's under my protection right now," Blackwell said. "You'll have to go through me. I have a court order." Pike produced a document. "Signed by Judge Morrison this morning. Commands you to turn over one Rosemary Sullivan, age 7, to my custody.
Failure to comply makes you in contempt. Blackwell took the paper, read it, his jaw tightening. Morrison's in Carver's pocket. Judge Morrison is a respected member of the California judiciary. Are you questioning his integrity? I'm questioning yours. Pike's smile never wavered. The law is the law, Marshal. You of all people should understand that. Blackwell looked at Nate, and Nate saw the apology in his eyes before he spoke. I'm sorry. My hands are tied. Like hell they are. Nate, don't. Nate stood, pulling Rose up with him. We're leaving. The two men with Pike moved, blocking the door. Pike shook his head. I'm afraid that's not possible. Get out of my way. Can't do that. Nate's hand moved to his gun. The two hired men moved faster, weapons clearing leather. Blackwell's gun came up too, but he was aiming at Pike's men, not at Nate. Easy, Blackwell said. Nobody needs to die here. I disagree, Nate said quietly. I think Pike needs to die very much. Pike laughed. Threats, Mr. Crawford? From a blacksmith who's already assaulted my associate? You're making this worse for yourself. Don't care. You should, because if you walk out that door with the girl, I'll burn your forge to the ground. I'll salt your land. I'll make sure you never work in this territory again. Already planning to do that anyway, aren't you? Pike's smile finally dropped. Give me the girl, Crawford. Last chance. No. The room went silent. Nate could hear his own heartbeat, could feel Rose trembling beside him. 6 against 2, and Blackwell might not even be on his side. The math wasn't good, but the math had never been good. Not since he'd found Rose under those rocks. Then Blackwell spoke. Pike, you got 5 seconds to get out of my office. Pike's head snapped toward him. Excuse me? You heard me. Get out. I have a court order from a crooked judge 300 miles away. Doesn't mean shit here. This is my town, my jurisdiction, and I'm telling you to leave. Marshal, you're making a terrible mistake. 4 seconds. Pike's men shifted, uncertain. Blackwell's gun stayed steady. 3. You're choosing a blacksmith and a runaway over the law? I'm choosing right over wrong. 2. Pike stared at him, calculating. Then he backed toward the door. This isn't over. Never thought it was. 1. Pike and his men left. Through the window, Nate watched them mount up and ride slowly out of town. Pike looking back once, with murder in his eyes. Blackwell holstered his gun and turned to Nate. You've got maybe 6 hours before he comes back with real authority. Maybe a federal marshal. Maybe the cavalry. I can't stop that. I know. So what are you going to do? Nate looked down at Rose. What I have to. Which is? Still figuring that out. Blackwell sighed. There's a line shack 2 days north, up in the high country. Empty this time of year. You could hole up there while I try to sort this out legal-like. And if you can't? Then you keep running until you hit Canada. Rose spoke up, her voice small. I don't want to run forever. Might not have a choice, child, Blackwell said gently. There's always a choice, Nate said. We just haven't found it yet. Blackwell pulled a map from his desk drawer and spread it across the wood. Line shack's here, near Copper Lake. Remote. Pike won't find you easy. Nate studied the map, but his mind was already working through the problem. Running meant living in fear. Meant Rose, growing up looking over her shoulder, never settling, never having a home. He'd lived like that during the war, and he wouldn't wish it on anyone, especially not a child. There's another way, Nate said slowly. I'm listening. We go after Carver. Blackwell's head snapped up. You've lost your mind. Have I? Pike's just an employee. Cut off the head, the body dies. Augustus Carver is untouchable. He's got money, power, politicians in his pocket. And he's got a weakness. Nate looked at Rose. He wants her. Specifically her. Why? Rose shook her head. I don't know. Mama never said anything about him. Pike mentioned education, training. He said Carver wanted you young enough to mold. That's not just about cheap labor. That's personal. Blackwell sat back down heavily. What are you thinking? I'm thinking men like Carver don't get their hands dirty. They hire people like Pike. But Pike's not loyal, not really. He's loyal to money. And if we can prove Carver ordered your mama's death, Rose, then the whole contract falls apart. Prove it how? Rose asked. Pike keeps records. Has to, for the money. If we can find them, find proof that Carver paid for murder, then we've got leverage. That's insane, Blackwell said. You want to rob Vernon Pike? I want to save Rose. If that means robbing Pike, then yes. You'll get yourself killed. Maybe, but at least I'll die trying instead of running. Rose pulled her hand from Mate's. I don't want you to die for me. And I don't want you spending 7 years as Carver's property. So we're at an impasse. Nate crouched down to her level. Listen to me. Your mama died protecting you. Died so you could run, could hide, could be free. I'm not going to waste that. I'm not going to let her sacrifice mean nothing. But no buts. I'm doing this. Only question is whether you trust me enough to let me. Rose's eyes filled with tears. I trust you. Good. Nate stood and turned to Blackwell. Where would Pike be staying? If he's smart, Hotel Carson, south end of town. If he's stupid, he's camped outside, waiting for reinforcements. He's not stupid. No, he's not. Blackwell stood. I can't help you with this, Nate. Can't be seen helping you break the law. I know. But I also can't be everywhere at once. Might need to check on some trouble out at the Hensley Ranch. Might take me an hour, maybe 2, to ride out there and back. Nate understood. Appreciate it, Owen. Don't thank me yet. You get caught, I never saw you. Never had this conversation. Fair enough. Blackwell moved to the door, then paused. Nate, be careful. Pike's dangerous, but Carver's worse. You poke that bear, he'll come down on you with everything he's got. Then I better make sure the poke counts. Blackwell left. Nate and Rose stood alone in the marshal's office, the afternoon sun slanting through the windows. Rose looked up at him. What do we do now? Now you stay here. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone but me or Blackwell. You're going alone? I am. That's stupid. Probably, but I'm not putting you in more danger. I'm already in danger, and 2 people are harder to catch than 1. Nate almost smiled. Your mama was right. You do have a temper. Please, don't leave me here. Something in her voice made him pause. Not anger. Fear. Real fear. The kind that went bone deep. He remembered that fear from the war. The terror of being left behind. Of waiting while others fought. Of not knowing if they'd come back. All right, he said. But you stay close, and you do exactly what I say. Understand? I understand. They left the office and moved through the back alleys of Salvation Creek, avoiding the main street. Nate's hand stayed near his gun, his eyes scanning every shadow, every doorway. Pike's men could be anywhere. Hotel Carson sat at the edge of town, a 2-story building with peeling paint and crooked shutters. Nate circled it once, counting windows, exits, noting the stable out back where Pike's horses were tied. 3 horses, so Pike and 2 men. Better odds than 6. Wait here, Nate whispered to Rose, tucking her behind a water trough. What are you going to do? Going to see which room is Pike's.
He moved to the hotel's rear entrance, tried the door. Locked. He pulled a thin piece of metal from his pocket, something he'd made at the forge years ago for when he locked himself out of his cabin. Slid it into the lock, felt for the mechanism, twisted. The lock clicked open. Inside, the hotel was quiet. Late afternoon, most guests would be out, working or drinking or doing whatever people did in small towns. Nate climbed the stairs slowly, testing each step for creaks. At the top, he found 4 doors. 3 were open, rooms empty. The 4th was closed. He pressed his ear against it and heard voices. Pike's smooth tone and another man's rougher voice, arguing. "Don't care what the marshal said, we're not leaving without her. I'm telling you, we wait. Carver wants this done clean, not with bodies in the street. Carver's not here, we are, and that blacksmith made me look like a fool. Dutch, you are a fool. Now shut up and let me think." So Dutch was still alive, still angry. That complicated things. Nate backed away from the door and returned to Rose. "Pike's in room 4, 2nd floor. He's got Dutch with him." "Just 2? "Sounds like. The 3rd man's probably watching the horses or guarding the front." "So what's the plan?" Nate looked at her, this small girl with too much courage and her mother's red hair. "The plan is you go back to the marshal's office and wait." "No." "Rose, I said no. You need someone to watch your back. And I'm small. I can hide, can move quiet. Mama taught me."
"Your mama taught you to be a lookout?" "Mama taught me to survive. Sometimes that meant being quiet and invisible." Nate wanted to argue, wanted to send her somewhere safe. But safe didn't exist anymore, not for Rose. And maybe she was right. Maybe 2 people, even if one was just a child, were better than 1. "You see trouble, you run. Don't wait for me, don't try to help. Just run. We clear?" "Clear." They went back inside. Nate positioned Rose at the top of the stairs where she could see both the hallway and the front entrance below. Then he moved to room 4 and knocked. The voices inside stopped. Footsteps approached. The door opened a crack and Dutch's battered face appeared, his jaw still swollen from where Nate had hit him. "You!" Dutch snarled. Nate kicked the door hard. It slammed into Dutch's face and the big man stumbled backward, cursing. Nate was through in a second, gun drawn, finding Pike standing by the window. "Don't move," Nate said. Pike's hands went up slowly, but he was smiling. "Mr. Crawford, I wondered when you'd do something stupid. Where are your records?" "My what?" "Don't play. You keep records of your contracts, your payments, everything. Where are they?" "And why would I tell you?" Dutch was getting up, blood streaming from his nose. Nate swung the gun toward him. "Stay down." "Make me, you son of a—" Nate shot him. Not to kill, just winged his shoulder, enough to put him back on the floor. The gunshot was deafening in the small room. Dutch screamed, clutching his arm. Pike's smile vanished. "You just shot an unarmed man." "He was armed with stupidity. Now answer my question. Where are the records?" "You think killing me will save the girl?" "Carver has copies of everything. The contract's ironclad." "Then you won't mind showing me?" Pike's eyes flicked to the dresser. Just a glance, barely noticeable, but enough. Nate moved to it, keeping the gun on Pike, and pulled open the top drawer. Inside was a leather satchel, heavy with papers. "Touch that, and you're a thief as well as an assailant," Pike said. "Add it to my list." Nate grabbed the satchel. "Rose, time to go." Her footsteps came fast down the hallway. She appeared in the doorway, saw Dutch bleeding on the floor, and her face went white. "Is he—" "He's fine. Let's move." They ran. Down the stairs, out the back, into the alley. Behind them, Pike was shouting, "Stop them! Someone stop them!" The 3rd man appeared from around the corner, gun drawn. Nate didn't hesitate, fired once, hit the man in the leg. He went down, screaming. Nate grabbed Rose's hand, and they ran toward the main street. People were emerging from buildings, drawn by the gunshots. Nate saw the general store owner, the bartender, Mei Chen from the laundry, all of them staring. "Someone get the marshal!" Pike's voice carried from the hotel. "That man just robbed me!" Nate kept running, pulling Rose toward where they'd left the horses. But more men were appearing, blocking their path. Men Nate didn't recognize. Men who worked for Pike, or Carver, or just men who followed orders without asking questions. They were trapped. Nate backed up against the wall of the bank, Rose behind him, guns sweeping across the growing crowd. There were too many. Even if he fired every bullet, he couldn't stop them all. "Easy now," Pike called from the hotel porch. He was walking toward them slowly, hands visible, like approaching a spooked horse. "Nobody else needs to get hurt. Just give me the satchel and the girl, and we'll forget this happened." "Go to hell," Nate said. "Mr. Crawford, please, be reasonable. You're outnumbered, outgunned. This ends one way." "Then I guess we find out how many of you I can take with me." Pike stopped. For the first time, Nate saw genuine uncertainty in his eyes. Because Nate meant it. Pike could see that. Everyone could see that. Then a new voice cut through the tension. "That's enough." Reverend Amos Fletcher stepped out of the church, his white hair catching the late sun. He was old, maybe 70, his back bent from years of living. But his voice was strong. "Reverend, this is not your concern," Pike said. "Child in danger? That's every Christian's concern." Fletcher moved through the crowd, people parting for him. "What's happening here?" "This man," Pike gestured to Nate, "has stolen my property and assaulted my associates." "I see blood. I see fear. I see a little girl who looks terrified." Fletcher stopped beside Nate. "Don't see any theft, though." "He has my satchel." "I see a man holding a bag. Don't know that it's yours." "Reverend, with all due respect." "Son, when someone says, 'with all due respect,' they usually mean the opposite." Fletcher turned to the crowd. "How many of you know Nathaniel Crawford?" A few hands went up. Not many. Nate kept to himself, mostly. "How many know him to be a liar or a thief?" No hands. "How many have heard him speak ill of anyone, cheat anyone, hurt anyone who didn't deserve it?" Still no hands. "Now," Fletcher continued, "how many of you have heard stories about Augustus Carver, about his mines where workers die regular, about his hotels where young girls disappear, about contracts that look legal but smell like slavery?" Uncomfortable shifting, downcast eyes. Nobody wanted to say it out loud, but everyone knew. "I thought so." Fletcher looked at Pike. "I think maybe you should leave our town, Mr. Pike, before someone gets hurt that doesn't deserve it. I have a legal court order from Judge Morrison, who drinks for free at Carver's hotels, who got his appointment through Carver's political donations. You want to waive that paper, you go ahead. But don't expect us to pretend it means anything." Pike's jaw tightened. "You're all making a mistake. When Mr. Carver hears about this, then he hears about it." This from Mei Chen, stepping forward. "We're not afraid of rich men in Sacramento." "I am," said the bartender. "But I'm more afraid of looking at myself in the mirror if I let you take that child." More voices joined in. Not everyone. Some people backed away, wanted no part of this trouble. But enough stayed. Enough stood between Pike and Nate. Pike looked around, calculating. Then he smiled, but it was thin and cold. "You've made your choice. Live with the consequences." He turned and walked back to the hotel. His men followed, Dutch, limping and bleeding, the third man being helped along. They mounted their horses and rode out, Pike looking back once at Nate. "This isn't finished," he called. "Never thought it was," Nate called back. When they were gone, Fletcher turned to Nate. "You all right, son?" "I've been better. Thank you, Reverend." "Don't thank me. Thank the Lord who put me in this place at this time." Fletcher looked down at Rose. "And who is this?" "Rose Sullivan. Her mother was killed by Pike's men. They're trying to take her." "I see." Fletcher's face softened. "Hello, Rose."
"Hello, sir."
Rose's voice was small. "Your mama. She die protecting you?" Rose nodded, unable to speak. "Then she was a woman of courage. You honor her by living, child. By living free." Fletcher straightened. "Nate, you need sanctuary?" "Might. Pike will be back." "Then you'll stay at the church tonight, both of you. I've got a room in the back, small but clean. You'll be safe there."
"Reverend, I don't want to bring trouble to your door."
"Too late. Trouble's already here. Question is whether we face it together or alone. I prefer together." Nate felt something catch in his throat. He'd been alone so long, he'd forgotten what community felt like. What it meant to have people stand beside you for no reason except it was right.
"Thank you,"
he managed. They followed Fletcher to the church, a simple building at the north end of town. Inside was cool and quiet, sunlight filtering through plain glass windows. Fletcher led them to a small room behind the altar, barely big enough for a bed and a chair. "You rest," Fletcher said. "I'll bring food shortly." When he left, Rose sat on the bed and looked up at Nate.
"People helped us."
"They did."
"Why?"
"Because sometimes people surprise you. Sometimes they choose right over easy."
"Will it be enough? When Pike comes back?"
Nate opened the satchel and spread the papers across the bed. Contracts, receipts, letters. He read through them quickly, his hands starting to shake.
"What is it?"
Rose asked. "Your mama didn't borrow money from Carver. She never signed anything."
"But the contract."
"The contract's a forgery. Look." He held up two papers. "This one's supposedly your mama's signature, agreeing to indenture. This one's a receipt from a Sacramento boarding house from 2 months ago, also with her signature. They don't match." Rose studied them.
"Mama's real signature is rounder. The one on the contract is too sharp."
"Exactly. Pike forged it, which means the whole thing is fraud."
"So I'm free?"
"Not yet. We need someone who can verify this, someone Pike can't intimidate or buy off."
"Who?"
Before Nate could answer, Fletcher returned with bread, cheese, and water. Nate showed him the documents. "Can you read, Reverend?"
"Well enough. Why?"
"Need you to look at these signatures. Tell me if they match." Fletcher studied them carefully, holding them up to the light. After a long moment, he shook his head.
"Not even close. One's clearly copied from the other, but the hand is different."
"You'd swear to that?"
"In front of God and any judge you like."
"Even if it meant going against Augustus Carver?"
Fletcher smiled. "Son, I'm 73 years old. I've buried 2 wives and 4 children. I've lived through war and drought and every kind of sorrow the Lord saw fit to send."
"You think I'm afraid of some rich man in a city?"
"No, sir. I guess you're not."
"Good. Now eat, both of you. You're going to need your strength." They ate in silence, the weight of what came next hanging over them. Pike would return, probably with more men, maybe even with federal authority. And when he did, a forged signature and a reverend's testimony might not be enough. But it was more than they'd had this morning, more than they'd had when Nate heard Rose screaming 3 days ago. It was hope, small and fragile, but real. Rose finished eating and curled up on the bed. Within minutes, she was asleep, exhausted from fear and running and carrying grief too heavy for a child. Nate watched her breathe, watched her face relax, and felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders like iron.
He'd promised to protect her, had killed for her, stolen for her, made enemies of powerful men for her. And he'd do it all again, without hesitation. Because somewhere between finding her in those rocks and now, Rose had stopped being a stranger and started being his. Not his daughter, not exactly, but his responsibility, his purpose, his reason for waking up tomorrow. Fletcher sat beside him. You love her. She reminds me of my son. That's not what I asked. Nate was quiet for a long time. Then, yeah, I love her. Good. She needs that. Needs someone who'll love her enough to fight for her. I'm just one man, Reverend. One man with a bad leg and a lot of enemies. One man can change the world. Jesus proved that. I'm not Jesus. No, but you're doing his work all the same. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky red and gold. Nate watched the light fade and thought about tomorrow, about Pike, about all the ways this could end badly. Then he looked at Rose, sleeping peacefully for the first time in days, and decided it didn't matter. Whatever came, he'd face it. For her. Always for her. Nate woke to the sound of horses. Not 2 or 3, but many. The thunder of hooves on hard-packed earth that meant an army, not a posse. He was on his feet instantly, gun in hand, moving to the window. Dawn was breaking, pale and cold, and in the gray light he counted them. 20 men, maybe more, riding in formation down the main street. At their head rode Vernon Pike, his arm in a sling but his back straight, and beside him was someone new. A man in an expensive suit, silver-haired and commanding, sitting his horse like he owned the world. Fletcher appeared in the doorway. That's Augustus Carver. You sure? Saw his picture in the Sacramento newspaper last year. He's come himself. Rose stirred on the bed, her eyes opening, fear flooding her face when she heard the horses. They're back. Yeah. Nate moved away from the window. Get dressed, quick. She was already moving, pulling on her shoes, smoothing down Sarah's old dress. Her hands were shaking, but her face was set, determined. Whatever came, she'd face it standing. Outside, Carver's voice rang out, cultured and precise. I'm looking for Reverend Fletcher. I'd like a word. Fletcher squeezed Nate's shoulder. Stay here. Let me talk to him. Reverend, trust me, son. Fletcher walked out of the church and stood on the steps. Nate watched through the crack in the door, Rose pressed against his side. Mr. Carver, Fletcher said, didn't expect to see you in our humble town. Reverend Fletcher. Carver dismounted smoothly, his movements practiced. I apologize for the early hour. I'm here on a matter of some urgency. I expect you are. I'm told you're harboring a fugitive, a blacksmith named Nathaniel Crawford, and a child who belongs to me. Belongs to you? Interesting choice of words. Carver smiled, but it was cold. Perhaps I should say, a child who is contractually obligated to me. I have legal documents, all in order, witnessed and notarized. The child's mother sold her indenture to cover debts. Quite standard. Except the mother's dead. Yes, tragic accident, I'm told. But the contract survives the signatory. The child is legally mine. Fletcher descended the steps slowly. And if I told you the signature was forged? I've asked you to prove it. I can. Got 2 documents right here, both supposedly signed by Margaret Sullivan. One's real, one's not. Any fool can see the difference. Carver's expression didn't change. Reverend, I admire your conviction, but I have the full weight of California law behind me. Federal marshals, judges, politicians. What do you have? A small town and an old man's testimony? I have the truth. Truth is flexible, Reverend. It bends to whoever has the power to shape it. Carver gestured to his men. I don't want trouble here. Give me the child, and we'll leave peacefully. Everyone goes home. No one else gets hurt.
Can't do that. Can't or won't? Both. Carver sighed, like a disappointed teacher. Then I'm afraid you leave me no choice. Mr. Pike, execute the warrant. Pike dismounted, pulling a document from his coat. By order of Judge Morrison, and with the authority of the California Territorial Government, I am authorized to search any building, seize any property, and arrest anyone who interferes. He looked at Fletcher. Step aside, Reverend. No. I don't want to hurt you. Then don't. Pike moved toward the church. Fletcher didn't budge. For a moment, they stood face to face, old preacher and young collector, neither willing to bend. Then Nate stepped out, Rose's hand in his. I'm here, Pike. No need to go through the Reverend. Carver's eyes found Rose, and something flickered in his expression. Satisfaction, maybe. Or hunger. There she is. Hello, child. Rose pressed closer to Nate, silent. She doesn't want to talk to you, Nate said. What she wants is irrelevant. She's 7 years old. Children don't make their own decisions. Carver dismounted and walked closer, his movements unhurried. I'm offering her opportunities, Mr. Crawford. Education, training, a chance at a better life than her mother could have provided. By making her a servant? By teaching her discipline and skills. She'll learn to read, to write, to manage a household. When her 7 years are complete, she'll be released with money and references. She could work anywhere, be anything. If she survives 7 years. I treat my servants well. That why 3 of them ran away last year? That why 1 of them turned up dead in the Sacramento River? Carver's smile froze. Rumors, lies spread by competitors. Or truth you don't want told. Nate pulled the documents from his pocket. Your contract's a forgery. Rose's mama never signed it. Pike killed her when she refused, then forged her signature and called it legal. Prove it. Already have. Reverend Fletcher verified the signatures don't match. And I'm willing to bet, if we dig deep enough, we'll find other contracts, other children, other mothers who conveniently had accidents when they wouldn't cooperate. Carver's expression hardened. You're making serious accusations, Mr. Crawford. Defamatory accusations. I could have you arrested for slander. Go ahead, long as Rose stays free. She won't. She's mine. The law says so. The law's wrong. The law is what I say it is. Carver gestured, and his men moved, spreading out, surrounding the church. 20 guns against 2. The math was simple and brutal. But then doors opened. The general store, the saloon, the boarding house, Mei Chen's laundry. People emerged, and they were armed. Not well armed, not soldier armed, just townspeople with hunting rifles and old revolvers, and whatever they could grab. But they came anyway. Marshal Blackwell stepped out of his office, rifle in hand. That's far enough, Carver. Marshal, you're making a mistake. So you keep saying. But I've looked at those documents Nate showed me. The signatures don't match. That makes your contract fraud and Pike a murderer. You have no jurisdiction over me. True, but I have jurisdiction over this town. And right now, you're threatening my citizens. I'm executing a legal warrant. With 20 armed men? That's not execution. That's invasion. Blackwell worked the rifle's action. Leave now, or I'll arrest you for disturbing the peace. Carver laughed. You and what army? This one. Blackwell gestured to the townspeople. Maybe 30 now, maybe more, standing in doorways and windows, watching, waiting. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Carver spoke, his voice dropping the pleasant veneer.
You people have no idea what you're doing. I own half of California. I have senators, judges, railroad magnates in my pocket. One telegram, and this town disappears from the map.
No supplies, no mail, no nothing. You'll starve before winter. Maybe, Fletcher said, but we'll starve free. Free? Carver turned on him. You talk about freedom like it's some holy thing, but freedom without order is chaos. That child's mother was chaos. Drunk, in debt, raising a daughter in saloons and gambling dens. I would have saved Rose from that, given her structure, purpose, a future. By owning her, Nate said quietly. By guiding her. There's a difference. No, there's not. Carver stared at him, and for the first time, Nate saw past the polish, past the expensive suit and cultured voice, to the rot underneath. This was a man who truly believed he had the right to own people, to shape them, to use them up and throw them away. Last chance, Crawford. Give me the girl, walk away. I'll even pay you for your trouble, say, $500? No. 1,000? No amount of money buys her. Then you're a fool. Carver turned to his men. Take her. They moved. 20 men surging forward, and Nate raised his gun, knowing it was hopeless, knowing he couldn't stop them all, but determined to try. Then the townspeople stepped into the street. Not threatening, not raising weapons, just standing there, forming a wall of bodies between Carver's men and the church. Move, Pike ordered. They didn't move. I said, move! Mei Chen stepped forward. She was small, barely 5 feet, but her voice carried. You want the child? You go through us. You're obstructing justice. We're protecting a little girl. You figure out which one God judges. Pike looked at Carver. Carver's jaw tightened, his hands curling into fists. Fine, if that's how you want it. He pulled a pistol from his coat, pointed it at May. Move, or I shoot. The street went silent. May didn't flinch, didn't step back, just stood there, staring down the barrel of Carver's gun. You won't, she said quietly. Won't I? No. Because if you do, you prove everything they say about you is true. That you're a murderer, not a businessman. That you use violence instead of law. You shoot me, you lose everything. Carver's hand trembled. Nate could see the calculation in his eyes, the war between rage and self-preservation. For a long moment, the world held its breath. Then a new voice cut through the tension. Lower the weapon, Mr. Carver. Everyone turned. A man in a dark suit was riding down the street, alone, a silver star on his chest. Not a local marshal's star, a federal star. Who the hell are you? Carver demanded. U.S. Marshal Thomas Webb. I'm here on behalf of the Department of Justice. Webb dismounted, his movements calm, controlled. I've been investigating reports of illegal indenture contracts and human trafficking in Northern California. Your name keeps coming up, Mr. Carver. This is harassment. I have legal contracts. Forged contracts. I've reviewed the documents, Mr. Crawford provided to the Territorial Governor's office yesterday. The signatures are clearly fraudulent. Your associate, Mr. Pike, is wanted for questioning in connection with the death of Margaret Sullivan and at least 4 other women who accidentally died when they wouldn't comply with your contracts. Pike went pale. That's a lie. I never— You killed my mama! Rose's voice rang out, clear and strong. She pulled away from Nate and walked toward Pike, small and fearless. I saw you. I saw Dutch push her, and I heard the gunshot, and I saw her die. Child, you're confused. I'm not confused. You killed her because she wouldn't give me to you.
You killed her, and you called it an accident, and you thought nobody would care because we were nobody. But somebody does care. He cares. She pointed at Nate. And they care. She gestured to the townspeople. And God cares, even if you don't. Silence. Then Webb spoke again.
Vernon Pike, you're under arrest for murder, fraud, and trafficking. Augustus Carver, you're under investigation. I'd advise you to come with me peacefully. This is absurd. I have rights. So did the women you killed. So did the children you enslaved. Webb's hand moved to his gun. Your choice, Mr. Carver, peaceful or not. Carver looked around at his men, at the townspeople, at the federal marshal with iron in his eyes. The calculation was simple now. Fight and lose everything, or retreat and fight another day with lawyers and politicians. He chose retreat. Fine, I'll come. But this isn't over. I'll have lawyers in San Francisco within the week. I'll bury all of you in paperwork and legal fees until you beg for mercy. You're welcome to try, Webb said. Won't change the fact that you're finished. Pike tried to run, got maybe 10 steps before Blackwell tackled him, drove him into the dirt, and cuffed his hands behind his back. Pike was screaming, crying, begging. It was Carver. It was all Carver. I just did what he told me. I didn't want to hurt anyone. Save it for the judge, Blackwell said, hauling him up. Webb took custody of both men, loaded them onto horses, their hands bound. Carver's men scattered, disappearing like smoke. No loyalty once their employer was in chains. As they rode out, Carver looked back at Rose one last time. You'll regret this, child. You could have had everything. I already have everything, Rose said quietly. I have family. When they were gone, the street erupted. People cheering, crying, hugging each other. Mei Chen was sobbing, Fletcher was praying, and Blackwell just stood there shaking his head like he couldn't believe it was over. Nate knelt down in front of Rose. You all right? I'm scared. Me too. But we won. We did. She threw her arms around his neck, and Nate held her. This child who wasn't his blood, but was his heart, and felt something break open inside him. Not grief this time. Something else. Something like hope. Fletcher came over, his old face wet with tears. The Lord works in mysterious ways. That he does, Nate agreed. What now? What will you do? Nate looked at Rose. What do you want to do? She pulled back, wiped her eyes. Can I stay with you? If you want. I want. If you'll have me. Rose, I've been alone for 5 years. Been empty for 5 years. You filled that up. So yeah, I'll have you. If you'll have me. As what? You're not my papa. No, but I could be, if you wanted, if that's something you'd want. Rose looked up at him with those green eyes that held too much pain, too much loss, but also something new, something like joy. I'd like that, Papa. The word hit him like a bullet, like a blessing. Papa. He was someone's papa again. Not Benjamin's. Benjamin was gone, and always would be. But Rose's. And that was enough. That was everything. Come on, he said, standing. Let's go home. They walked through the town together, Rose's hand in his, and people called out congratulations, offered food and supplies for the journey back. Mei Chen pressed a package of dried fruit into Rose's hands. The bartender gave Nate a bottle of whiskey. Fletcher promised to visit soon, to check on them, to make sure they were all right. At the edge of town, Blackwell caught up to them. Nate, hold up! Nate turned. Owen, I need to know,
When you shot Dutch and that other man, when you broke into Pike's room and stole those documents, technically, that's assault and robbery. Technically, yeah. I should arrest you. Probably should. Blackwell was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled. But I didn't see anything. Far as I'm concerned, Pike and his men started a fight and you defended yourself. And those documents? Pike dropped them when he was fleeing. You just picked them up and brought them to me as evidence. That's your story? That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Nate held out his hand. Thank you, Owen. Don't thank me. Just treat that girl right. Raise her good. I will. They rode out of Salvation Creek as the sun climbed higher, warming the air. Nate's forge was waiting, 3 hours west. And after that, whatever life they built together. It wouldn't be easy. Rose would have nightmares, would grieve her mother for years, maybe forever. And Nate would always carry Benjamin's ghost, would always feel that ache when he looked at his son's grave. But they'd have each other. They'd have a home. And somehow, that felt like enough. Halfway back, Rose spoke. Papa? He still wasn't used to that word. Didn't know if he'd ever get used to it. Yeah? Tell me about Benjamin. Tell me everything. So he did. He told her about his son, about Sarah, about the life he'd had and lost. And Rose told him about her mother, about her father, about living in Sacramento, and the night Pike came. They traded stories like currency, like treasures, each one a piece of themselves given freely. By the time they reached the forge, the sun was setting, painting everything gold. The cabin looked different somehow, less lonely, less like a tomb and more like a home. It's small, Nate said. I don't need much. We'll fix it up, add another room maybe, paint the walls. Can I have a garden? Mama always wanted a garden. Yeah, we'll plant one come spring. Vegetables, flowers, whatever you want. They dismounted, and Nate showed Rose around. The forge, the barn, the hillside where Sarah and Benjamin lay buried. Rose stood at the graves for a long time, reading the names carved into the simple wooden crosses. Can we bring flowers here sometimes? She asked. Every Sunday if you want. I'd like that. Mama loved flowers. Then we'll bring them for your mama too. Plant some on her grave when we find out where she's buried. Pike probably dumped her somewhere. Then we'll find her, and we'll bury her proper, with a stone and flowers and everything she deserves. Rose nodded, her eyes wet. Thank you. That night, Nate made dinner while Rose explored the cabin, claiming Benjamin's old room as her own. She found some of his toys, things Nate had kept because he couldn't bear to throw them away. A wooden horse, some carved soldiers, a spinning top. Can I keep these? She called out. They're yours. You sure? I'm sure. Benjamin would have wanted someone to play with them. They ate together at the table, the first real meal they'd shared. After, Nate cleaned the dishes while Rose sat by the fire, yawning. Time for bed, he said. Will you stay until I fall asleep? Every night if you need me to. He sat by her bed while she curled under the quilt Sarah had made, the same quilt that had covered Benjamin. Rose's eyes were already heavy, exhaustion pulling her under. Papa? Yeah? I'm glad I found you. I'm glad I found you too, Rose. Do you think Mama's watching? From heaven? I know she is. Then she knows I'm safe. She knows. Rose's eyes drifted closed. Nate started to stand, but her hand shot out, grabbed his. Don't go yet. I'm right here. Promise? Promise. He sat there in the darkness, holding his daughter's hand, and thought about promises. The ones he'd broken, the ones he'd kept, the ones he was making now. He'd promised Benjamin he'd get better, and that had been a lie. But he'd promised Rose he'd keep her safe, and that was truth.
the deepest truth he knew. Outside, the wind whispered through the valley. Inside, a child slept peacefully for the first time in days. And Nathaniel Crawford, blacksmith, widower, father again, watched over her and knew that whatever came next, whatever trials or troubles, they'd face them together. Because that's what family did. Not the family you were born into, but the family you chose, the family you fought for, the family you built from love and loss and everything in between. Rose's breathing evened out, and Nate finally stood, moved to the doorway. He looked back once at the small form under the quilt, at the red hair spilling across the pillow, at the face that was hers alone, not Benjamin's, not anyone else's, just Rose's. His daughter, his second chance, his reason for waking up tomorrow and every tomorrow after. Nate woke to the smell of smoke, not the good smoke of a forge fire, but something wrong, something burning. He was out of bed and moving before he was fully conscious, years of war training kicking in. The cabin was filling with haze, and he could hear Rose coughing in the back room. "Rose!" He grabbed her, wrapped her in a blanket, and carried her outside. The forge was ablaze, flames shooting through the roof, the heat so intense it hurt to breathe. Everything he'd built, everything he owned, burning. He set Rose down in the yard and ran for water, but even as he grabbed the first bucket, he knew it was hopeless. The fire was too big, too hot, too far gone. "Papa, stop!" Rose was pulling at his arm. "It's not safe." "My tools, the anvil, everything I need to work." "We'll get new ones. Please, just stop." Nate stood there, bucket in hand, watching 5 years of his life turn to ash and ember. The forge where he'd worked every day since Sarah died. The place where he'd hidden from grief, from memory, from everything that hurt too much to face. And now it was gone. Rose was crying, but she was also pulling him back, away from the heat. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "Why are you sorry? You didn't do this." "Carver did, or Pike's friends. Because of me." Nate knelt down, took her face in his hands. "Listen to me. This isn't your fault. None of it. You understand?" "But..." "No buts. Some men burn things because they're too small to build anything themselves. That's on them, not you." By dawn, the fire had burned itself out, leaving only blackened timbers and twisted metal. The anvil was still there, warped by heat but intact. Some tools had survived, buried under debris, but the building itself was gone. Neighbors started arriving as the sun rose. Mei Chen brought food. Fletcher brought lumber. Blackwell brought news that 2 men had been seen riding away from the forge around midnight, men matching the description of Carver's hired hands. "I'll find them," Blackwell promised. "Don't matter," Nate said. "They're gone, and the forge is gone. That's the end of it." "You're giving up?" "No, I'm moving forward." Nate looked at Rose, standing beside him in her nightgown and bare feet, covered in soot. "Got more important things to worry about than revenge." Fletcher put a hand on his shoulder. "What will you do?" "Rebuild." "What else can I do? You could come to town, work at the livery, or help at the general store. And give up this land? No. This is home. Has been for 15 years. Not letting some cowards with matches drive me off." "Then we'll help you rebuild." This from Mei Chen, her voice firm. "Whole town will help." And they did. Over the next week, men came with hammers and saws. Women brought meals. Children helped clear debris. Rose worked alongside them, carrying water, holding boards, never complaining, even though her hands blistered and her back ached. Nate watched her one afternoon, saw the way she pushed through exhaustion, and realized something. She was tougher than he'd given her credit for. Not just surviving, but fighting to build something new from the ashes. Just like him. One evening, after everyone had gone home, Nate and Rose sat in what would become the new forge, eating cold chicken May had brought. "Why do they help us?" Rose asked. "Most of them don't even know me." "Because that's what people do. When someone's down, you help them up." "Not everyone. Mr. Carver didn't." "No, some people only think about themselves. But the good ones, they remember that we're all in this together." Rose was quiet for a moment, picking at her food. "Do you think my mama would like it here?" "I think she'd love it. Quiet, peaceful, good people nearby." "I miss her." "I know." "Does it ever stop? The missing?" Nate thought about Sarah, about Benjamin, about the graves on the hillside that he visited every Sunday without fail. "No, but it changes, becomes less sharp, more like an old scar than a fresh wound." "How long does that take?" "Long as it takes. There's no schedule for grief, Rose." She leaned against him, and Nate put his arm around her shoulders. They sat like that until the stars came out, father and daughter, building a life from ruins. 2 weeks after the fire, Marshal Webb returned. He rode up alone, his horse tired, his face grim. "Nate, Rose, good to see you both." "Marshal, what brings you back?" Webb dismounted, pulled a folded paper from his coat. "Official business. Augustus Carver was convicted of fraud and human trafficking. He'll spend the next 20 years in territorial prison." "And Pike?" "Vernon Pike was convicted of murder in the first degree. Margaret Sullivan and 4 other women. He hangs next month." Rose went very still. Nate felt her hand find his, grip tight. "There's more," Webb continued. "We found your mother's body, Rose. She was buried in an unmarked grave outside Sacramento. We've moved her to a proper cemetery with a headstone. I thought you'd want to know." "Where?" Rose's voice was barely a whisper. "Sacramento City Cemetery, Plot 47, Row D. I had them put her name on the stone. Margaret Ann Sullivan, beloved mother." Tears were streaming down Rose's face now. "Can we go see her? Can we bring her flowers?" "Course we can," Nate said. "Soon as the forge is rebuilt, we'll take a trip to Sacramento. Visit your mama. Make sure she's resting peaceful." Webb nodded. "There's one more thing. Carver's estate is being liquidated to pay restitution to his victims. That includes you, Rose. You're entitled to compensation for what he tried to do." "How much?" Nate asked. $5,000. The number hung in the air like smoke. $5,000 was more money than Nate had seen in his entire life. More than most people in the territory would earn in a decade. "I don't want his money," Rose said. "Rose, I don't. He tried to buy me once. I won't let him do it again, even from prison." Webb shifted uncomfortably. "It's not about him buying you. It's about making things right. Your mother died because of him. You deserve something for that." "My mama deserves to be alive. Money won't bring her back." "No, but it could give you a future. Education, opportunities, choices." Rose looked up at Nate. "What do you think?" "I think it's your money, your choice. Whatever you decide, I'll support you." She thought for a long moment. Then, "Can we use it to help other people? Kids like me, whose parents died or who got taken by men like Carver?" Webb's expression softened. "I'm sure we could arrange that. Set up a fund, help children who need it." "Then that's what I want. All of it. Every penny." "Rose, you should keep some—" "No. I have everything I need right here." She squeezed Nate's hand. "I have a home, a papa, people who care about me. Other kids don't have that. They need it more." Webb looked at Nate. "You're raising her right."
She was already raised right. I'm just trying not to mess it up. After Webb left, Nate and Rose walked up to the hillside where Sarah and Benjamin lay buried. The graves were well tended, flowers growing around the simple crosses. Nate had planted them years ago, tended them through every season, kept them beautiful, because it was all he could do. Rose knelt beside Benjamin's grave, traced the carved letters with her finger. Benjamin Crawford, beloved son. I wish I could have met him. He would have liked you. Would have tried to get you to play soldier with him, probably. He loved games. What was his favorite? Hide and seek. He was terrible at it. Always giggled when you got close. Rose smiled through her tears. Mama was terrible at it too. She'd always hide in the same places, under the bed or behind the door. I always found her in 2 seconds. Smart woman, letting you win. I know. I figured that out later. But it was nice, feeling like I was good at something. Nate sat down beside her in the grass. Rose, I want to ask you something important. Okay. I want to adopt you, make it legal and official, make you a Crawford, but only if that's what you want. She looked at him, those green eyes wide. You mean it? Mean it more than anything I've ever said. But my name is Sullivan. That's my mama's name, my papa's name. I don't want to lose that. You don't have to. Could be Rose Sullivan Crawford. Keep your past, add your future. Rose Sullivan Crawford. She tested it, rolled it around on her tongue. That's a lot of name. You're a lot of person. You can handle it. She threw her arms around him, and Nate held her, this child who'd come into his life screaming and terrified, and had somehow become his whole world. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I want that. I want to be your daughter. Then you are. Papers or no papers, you're mine and I'm yours. That's all that matters. They sat there until the sun began to set, talking about Benjamin, about Margaret, about the people they'd loved and lost. And somehow, in the sharing, the grief became lighter. Not gone, never gone, but bearable. The new forge was finished by October, smaller than the old one, but solid. Nate worked the first piece of iron on the new anvil with Rose watching, her face bright with pride. What are you making? You'll see. He worked for hours, heating and hammering, shaping the metal until it took form. When he was done, he plunged it into water, and the steam rose in clouds. He pulled it out and held it up. A garden gate, delicate and strong, with roses worked into the ironwork. For your mama's grave, he said. When we visit Sacramento, we'll bring this. Make sure she has something beautiful. Rose touched the metal roses, her fingers tracing the petals. It's perfect. She was your mama. She deserves perfect. In November, they made the trip to Sacramento. 3 days there, 3 days back, and 1 day standing at Margaret Sullivan's grave. Nate installed the gate while Rose planted flowers, her hands gentle in the earth. Mama always wanted a garden, she said softly. Said when we settled somewhere permanent, she'd grow roses and sunflowers and everything beautiful. Then we'll make sure she has one here. Come back every year, tend it, keep it growing. Rose stood and brushed dirt from her hands. Papa? Yeah? Thank you. For all of this. For everything. Don't thank me for doing what any decent person would do. But not everyone did. Most people looked away. You didn't. Nate put his arm around her shoulders. Your mama died protecting you. Least I could do was finish what she started. They stood there in the quiet cemetery, the iron roses gleaming in the afternoon sun. And Nate felt something settle in his chest. Not peace exactly, but something close. Acceptance, maybe. The understanding that loss was part of life, but so was love, and you couldn't have one without the other. Winter came hard that year. Snow piled deep around the cabin,
and the forge stood silent for weeks at a time. But inside, there was warmth. Nate taught Rose to read using Sarah's old Bible. Rose taught Nate to sing the songs her mother had taught her, including the one that had haunted him since the day he found her. "Don't cry, little one. The dark will pass away. Don't cry, little one. Tomorrow brings the day." Simple words, a simple melody, but it meant everything. Margaret had sung it to Rose while dying, and now Rose sang it to Nate on cold nights when the wind howled and the memories came too sharp. One evening in December, Rose was sitting by the fire, mending one of Nate's shirts. Her hands had grown sure with the needle, her stitches small and even.
"Papa, can I ask you something?"
"Always."
"Do you think you'll ever get married again?"
The question surprised him. "Why do you ask?"
"Because you're not old, and you're not mean. Some woman would probably want you."
"Some woman, huh?"
May Chen looks at you sometimes, when you're not watching."
Nate felt heat creep up his neck. May's a friend. Mama had lots of friends, but she looked at some of them different. "Rose, I'm just saying, if you wanted to, I wouldn't mind. Long as she was nice to you." "That's mighty generous of you."
"I mean it. You don't have to be alone just because of me."
Nate set down his coffee and moved to sit beside her. "I'm not alone. I have you, and right now, that's enough. More than enough."
"But someday?"
"Someday, maybe. If the right person comes along, and if you're comfortable with it. But there's no rush. We've got time." Rose smiled and went back to her mending.
"Good, because I'm not ready to share you yet."
"Fair enough." Spring came with mud and rain and the promise of new growth. Rose planted a garden behind the cabin, working the soil with determination. She planted vegetables for eating and flowers for beauty, just like her mother would have wanted. Nate helped when he could, but mostly he watched, marveling at how much she'd grown in 6 months. Taller, stronger, less haunted. She still had nightmares sometimes, still woke up crying for her mother. But they were less frequent now, and when they came, Nate was there. One Sunday in April, they were riding back from town when Rose spoke up.
"Papa, I've been thinking."
"About?"
"About the money, the fund for other kids. I want to help run it when I'm older."
"That's so?"
"I know what it's like, being scared, being alone, not knowing if anyone will help. I want to make sure other kids don't have to feel that way."
"That's a good dream, Rose."
"Is it just a dream? Or can I really do it?"
"You can do anything you set your mind to. I'll make sure of that." She rode quietly for a moment. Then,
"I'm lucky, aren't I? Even with everything that happened, even with Mama dying. I'm lucky because I found you."
Nate felt his throat tighten. "I'm the lucky one."
"We're both lucky then."
"Yeah, I guess we are." By summer, life had found a rhythm. Nate worked the forge, taking commissions from all over the territory. Rose helped when she could, learning the trade, her hands growing strong from pumping the bellows. In the evenings, they ate together, talked about their days, made plans for the future. Fletcher visited often, sometimes staying for dinner. Blackwell stopped by when he was in the area. May Chen came once a week, bringing food and staying to chat. Rose insisted there was nothing romantic there, but Nate noticed May laughing at his jokes more than they probably deserved. One evening in July, on the anniversary of the day Nate had found Rose, they walked up to the hillside. Nate had added a new marker, a simple stone beside Sarah and Benjamin's graves. "In memory of Margaret Ann Sullivan," it read. "Beloved mother, fierce protector. She died so her daughter could live free." Rose traced the letters, tears streaming down her face.
"She did, didn't she? She died for me." She did. Because that's what love does. Sacrifices everything for the people who matter. Like you did. You could have given me to Pike, kept your forge, kept your life simple. But you didn't. Wasn't a sacrifice, Rose. Was a choice. And I'd make it again every single day. She looked up at him, this child who'd become his daughter, and smiled. I love you, Papa. I love you too, Rose. More than I thought I could love anything again. They stood there as the sun set, painting the valley gold and red. Somewhere in the distance a bird called. Somewhere closer, the creek murmured over stones. And in the quiet, Nate felt something he hadn't felt in 5 years. Complete. Not healed exactly. The scars were still there, would always be there. But whole. Because grief and joy could exist together. Because loss and love were two sides of the same coin. Because you couldn't appreciate the light without understanding the darkness. Rose took his hand. Come on, Papa. May's bringing supper, and you need to wash up.
Since when did you start giving orders? Since always. You just started listening. Nate laughed, really laughed, and followed his daughter down the hillside toward home. Toward the cabin that wasn't lonely anymore. Toward the forge that rang with purpose again. Toward a life he'd never expected, but wouldn't trade for anything. Behind them, the graves stood silent in the fading light. Sarah and Benjamin, forever at rest. Margaret, finally at peace. The dead watching over the living, the past making room for the future. And Nathaniel Crawford, who'd lost everything and found it again in the most unexpected way, walked toward tomorrow with his daughter's hand in his and gratitude in his heart. Because some things were worth fighting for, worth bleeding for, worth burning down your whole life and building it back from scratch. Family was one of those things. Not the family you were born into, but the family you chose. The family you fought for. The family you built from love and loss and everything in between. That was worth everything. That was worth the world. And as they reached the cabin and May's wagon came into view, as Rose ran ahead laughing and Nate followed more slowly, his bad leg aching, but his heart full, he understood something he'd been too grief-stricken to see before. Life wasn't about avoiding pain or hiding from loss. It was about loving anyway, fighting anyway, building anyway. It was about showing up when someone needed you, even if that someone was a stranger screaming in the rocks. It was about choosing right over easy, love over fear, hope over despair. It was about being the person someone could count on when the whole world fell apart. Nate had been that person for Rose, and Rose had been that person for him. Even if she didn't know it, she'd saved him just as much as he'd saved her. They'd saved each other. And that, Nate thought as he stepped into the warm cabin where May was already setting out plates and Rose was chattering about her garden, that was the whole point. Not just surviving, but living, really living, with all the messiness and pain and unexpected joy that came with it. Papa, you're letting the heat out, Rose called. Coming. He closed the door and joined them at the table, his family, chosen and beloved. The past was buried on the hillside. The future was sitting across from him, talking with her mouth full, gesturing wildly as she told May about the tomatoes that were finally ripening. And the present, this moment, this breath, this heartbeat, was exactly where he needed to be. Home.